Hi, Magda.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Welcome to Asian Business Owners.
Thank you for having me, and welcome everybody who's joining.
I'm glad to have you. This episode is part of the episode related to art and with art professionals related to Art Basel in Hong Kong at the end of March. So, Magda, you're the founder and owner of Danysz Gallery. It's present in Paris, London, and Shanghai. So, you're always traveling the world. And through your work, you share a vision of art, of contemporary art that is diverse, and you include many different forms of art. For example, urban art or art using also technologies, and you're curious to discover emerging artists, and find resonance between Europe and Asia. I wanted to chat about how it all started because in our previous chat I was very intrigued by the fact that you started your gallery at the age of 17. It's quite unusual. You started in the 90s. I'm not giving the exact date so people don't know how old you are. uh, and actually, it's an encounter that you made when you were 15 was a turning point for you. So, I would like to know not only what happened there, what happened at the time when you were 17, and why you're doing it, but also what gave you the, if I may say, the maturity to have such a focus when we know that when people are 17, they have very different focus without just judgment, obviously.
Thank you. No, I'm very open about the time it started. It's time flies. It was back in 1991, and yes, I was still a student. I think it's very interesting your questions and how it all started. I think all the best decisions I made in my life, and for some people it happens to be the same, I witnessed, are those you do not overthink. And
Mm,
so I would totally not say I was mature enough. I was reckless enough. I was free enough to envision things without overthinking them. And
mm,
then, as mentioned, there was one encounter when I was 15 that made it all come true. I think we all need inspiration, whether it comes in form of a book, a movie, or meeting someone. For me, I was lucky enough back then when I was 15 to meet Leo Castelli, who for many people who are art lovers would mean something. For those who don't know, this gentleman who sadly enough passed away already a long time ago, he was key to define American art in the second part of the 20th century. He was one of the, I wouldn't say biggest dealer because everything in our society is seen through um, size matters, money matters.
mm,
He was not a gentleman like this. He was someone who migrated for very sad reasons that we all know back at the turn of the half of the century of the 20th century from Europe to the States, had to redo his whole life and started just for the love of art, helped
mm.
by his beautiful wife. Never forget, behind a great man,
Yeah,
there is a smart
yeah.
woman. And they started a gallery, and he became like key to the scene back there. So this would be another interview, and but I dearly love him. Everything I do is dedicated to him because back in those days, long story short, I meet him as a kid, 15. I still consider I was a kid. And this gentleman's tell me, what do you want to do? And I was like you, mister, like kind of
Mm,
phony answer you could give. I don't know where that came from. I was super shy as a kid. So I'm like,
mm,
how did I even say this? And he said, oh, so you'd better start soon because it takes a lifetime. I really remember he was sitting in front of me. I was standing. It was at a book signing. And I was like, what? Why? And then
mm,
things happened that I saw him again. He explained it to me. And I have to say, he was very right. he was already in his very mature years. We only had a few years where we could chat more, but everything he said was through his experience was very true. He was at this stage of your life where you want to transmit something. And so
Mm,
he gave me this virus, this love, not the love of art, because this I already had. I was raised as in a studio, in an art studio. My mother's an artist, so this was
mm,
embedded in my DNA.
yeah.
Um, but he gave me the love of just doing it and go for it. And I think we all need this. So it was a very immature decision, but I think you have to be crazy enough to work in this business.
Yeah.
It is a tough one, and if I super fast forward, I'm like, wow, time flew, and yes, indeed, it took a lifetime. That's why I'm not shy about opening a long time ago. I still feel like
Yeah.
I'm 20, but that's another story because the artists keep you young.
Yeah. Well, in hindsight, of course, you say it was immature, but I think at the time having this, determination is quite unusual. That's why it piqued my curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. That I have to admit, I have a little stubbornness that
Mm,
sometimes might even get my family crazy. That I see in my daughter. So I'm like, oops. But
mm,
this stubbornness at that point helped a lot. It also helped in other moments of the galleries and all my adventures development when people are telling me maybe not. I'm like, whatever, I'll
yeah.
try. If I feel it's something that I want to do or that can, in a way or another, help or support the artist's vision slash career, I'm like, you know what? Let's try. What can happen?
Mm,
And back in 2008, when I started the China adventure and opened a gallery in Shanghai, that was exactly the same stubbornness. Worst case scenario, we pack our artworks back and we go back to Paris, and that's not a big deal. I even thought when I arrived in China it would be one show, and then here we are, 17 years
mm.
later. So
I think we have it can be a quality and also maybe a flaw in some situations. So, was there a time the stubbornness led you to make the wrong decision, or maybe there was a time you realized you were wrong about it and you had to take a step back and reconsider?
I have to admit many times as business owners, and I think a lot of people would relate, you do make mistakes. Whether it's because you're stubborn or you have this extra drive or you're tired, or you don't see the full picture. There are so many
Mm,
reasons. Um, but first, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. That's very true for business owners. It is a hard adventure. It is a very complicated path. Not only it takes a lifetime, but you have ups and downs. I reassure myself thinking that when you have downs, you appreciate even more so successes. But now, if I step back a little bit with the little experience I have, yes, there are plenty of things that I could have done differently. Um, then we have to ask ourselves for what. If it's just for financial gain, it is an important thing. But in a world now where we realize that money is not everything, we
mm,
have to think impact. Why do we do things? And sometimes mistakes can lead us to be, I don't know, more humble, more open to other people, more keen on finding other ways. I'm very grateful for lasting so long. I never thought
mm.
it could be 34 years now. Like, whoa, even saying this, I'm like, whoa, that's really long. And I'm grateful that now I'm in this phase. I want to share it. I want to transmit something that is not only the art, because that has always been key, but also the experience.
Mm.
It's a way to give back. And firstly,
Yeah.
you would understand to whom. I was lucky enough to meet someone who was transmitting to me. And I think that's inspiring, transmitting values. Why do we do things? And so we give future generations as business owners the tools to make our ideas, our businesses grow. Um,
Mm.
it leads, one of the mistakes maybe I did, or one of the things that took me maybe too much time, is to know that you need people around you. It seems obvious when you say it, but you need to have the good people. And for a long time, I was not
How did you
able to
realize
afford.
this?
It's just that I was in this race. I was not able to afford paying good wages to people. You know, it's or
Yeah.
too scared to invest the money.
Yeah.
So you're like, okay, how can I even be sure I'm
Yeah.
stable? We have very strict laws, labor laws in France. So if you hire someone, it's very hard to unhire someone. It's not as
Mm.
flexible as in other countries. So this is, for instance, a big mistake I did. I should have tried to find ways to hire the good people earlier, to
Yeah.
share the vision, inspire them, and then be able to grow. I think as business owners, people you work with are the people who make you grow.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
lucky enough to, and in the arts, we have this that we're working with artists, and that's not a
Mm.
question only of financial means. They do help, but it's also the artists you work with that make you grow. But internally, and this is really as business owners, whether you're in art or not, is the same. Hire people, cut yourself an arm, a leg if you need, but hire the good people. They
Yeah.
will make you grow, and the arm will grow again. I don't know how, but and that's
Yeah.
important. And this, I came to realize it when suddenly I had the people who stuck with me for like, I have people who worked with me for 18 years, and I was like, oh my God, they're still here. And for years, they were
Mm.
not getting the best salary on earth. They were getting paid because I always wanted people to get paid. But they stuck because there was a vision. They were growing with me and with
Yeah.
the business and with the artist. And then I knew I could step back, do something else, like be in China, for instance, and develop the business there. And they were taking care of the business back home.
Mm. But what made you take that leap and hire the first employees, the first people of your team? Did you receive any advice from someone, or were you just like, okay, I'm going to burn out if I don't have anyone by my side, so I have to hire someone?
No, I had to hire someone. That was not a choice. I mean, it's a gallery business, but like many small businesses, is a 24/7 job. And especially
Mm.
in galleries, you have to be. It's a market that is global by essence. So you have to be on Art Fest, but your gallery has to be open. So you have to demultiply yourself. You have to be in the artist studio, but you have to be with the collectors.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure a lot of business owners in other areas can relate too. You have to be at the production site and at the same time selling your thing, whatever it is, whether it's good or services. So at some point, you cannot be everywhere. So very
Mm.
naturally, I hired someone, and my first employee is the one who stayed with me the longest. So I was very
Yeah.
happy.
And you briefly mentioned your mother. She's an artist. And last time you also mentioned your father, who you told me who worked on the first computers at the time. Imagine now we're recording remotely. At the time,
Yeah.
it would have been just, you can't even think about it. And at the time, I mean, it was not so long ago. So I think it's so interesting to have these two different mindsets, because it's two different ways of thinking, reflecting, two different visions of the world, seeing the world, but can be very complementary. Do you think this gave you this, allow you to be curious, to see different forms of art, and maybe explore more? What part has this played in your life, in your work?
Yeah, I think we're all the product of our parents, the cultures, in plural, we were raised in, the travels our families have made or not. We're all the product of all this, obviously. In my
Mm,
case, I'm lucky. It is a rich history. I have an artist mother. My father was a scientist, coming from a very scientific family. They are what we call migrants today, and I'm very proud of the travel they did from Poland to France they were also in the UK before they ended up in France. So I'm very proud of the journey they made, which was tough, which is the same some people are doing these days. And I hope their kids one day will also be saying thanks to the families for doing those sacrifices so we could settle
mm,
somewhere and be who we are. Being the product of a rich influences, inspirations, and having this double education, artist and science, maybe led me to have a wide scope in terms of art.
mm,
But I think it's then we grow up also as ourselves. We are individuals, not only the product of what was embedded in our DNA. We then grow and have influences, other things of factors and coming into the equation.
mm.
So altogether, it's more that I like to discover, and I'm
Okay.
very at peace with it. My thing is to discover new artists, to discover new ways of expressing yourself. I'm not into just sitting here and convincing people to buy such and such art. I think we
Yeah.
collectively have a responsibility. So there is the business part, but there is the very also cultural part of this specific area. I insist it is a
Mm.
business because in France we have a little divorce between art and business, which is
Yeah.
less
Yeah.
true in the Anglo-Saxon culture. But I insist it is a business and a very interesting one. The art market is double the luxury watch market or double the music market. So it is an important
Huge.
market,
Yeah.
huge market, but it has a purpose. And that's where it becomes interesting. The purpose is
Mm,
co-producing new artists. And at a
mm,
time when we are talking impact, what is the mission of having a business, of being an entrepreneur? I think it is very interesting to reflect on that. And this diversity I had in my upbringing kind of always led me to ask myself, where am I from? Why am I here?
mm.
What are we doing in a world that is pretty harsh? So this mission, I totally accept it. And I think we do have as business owners in the arts the responsibility to carry the artist word and
Yeah.
even more so now that people are telling us, oh, AI is doing this and that. This is a great tool, but creativity is what fuels it. So we need our
Mm,
creators
mm,
and we
mm.
need to make their work sustainable.
Before we continue, I have fireside questions for you. I haven't told you about this. I like to keep it a surprise. So, one trend or artistic movement that you don't like or you didn't like.
Hmm. There is not that much that I don't like because there's always something to find if it's genuine, if it's a real artistic path. I was puzzled, like many, by some of the NFTs,
Yeah.
questioning the artistic
Mm,
part. It doesn't mean that I don't like. I've been a big defender of NFTs and everything they can carry. So don't get me
mm,
wrong on this one. But there has been a mix-up between part of the assets and the digital
yeah.
image that was on it. Was it a artistic, real thing? We can question it.
Mm,
So it's more about
yeah.
how what we call art or not. And
Okay. Okay.
but generally
Okay.
speaking, even when I was a kid, I used to not understand some artists, and I had this little internal debate why Andy Warhol is so like sought after and so expensive. And I remember I
Mm,
was like 9 or 10 years old. I went to the public library and took
Mm-hmm.
like a big book. It was big for my age. I remember I was like, oh, it's written in little characters. And I was like, okay, let's read the whole bio so I'll understand why there's such a fuss around him. And now I love
Mm.
where he comes from and where what he established. But I had like
Yeah.
my doubts because I didn't have the full picture. So I think in art, it's hard to not like something. It's just a question of um, digging
What you know
into it.
about the artist. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you could own one piece of art, no limit, let's imagine, what would it be? Which one would it be?
Oh, this one I know it since the 90s. I met this artwork at the Guggenheim. It's a Pollock piece that I met in a show. It's in good hands, so sometimes I can go if it's on display and say hello, but it's a Jackson Pollock piece. I know the piece.
A museum you could go to every day.
There are many museums I could go every day. Guggenheim, when I was going back and forth in New York to keep the link with Leo Castelli, was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of
Okay.
the places I would have to go immediately. Being more in Paris these days is Pompidou for sure.
And last question of this Fireside Questions. The most memorable art show you've been to? I know it's a tough questions.
There are key shows that define who you are because you've seen something. In my case, they would not be so much for the artist or the art movement, but it was probably more in the display. And there are shows like this that were, we had, yeah, there are many shows. There was a show called Elle in France that was,
Mm-hmm.
you could translate by she or, I mean, feminine pronouns.
Yeah.
And it was about putting forward women at Pompidou. It was the first one that was really tackling those questions. That was a key way of envisioning art and very important.
Okay. Now let's continue with the other questions. You briefly talked about the accessibility to art. We touched on this last time we chatted. I told you that, for example, my husband is not super. He's not really what we can call an art enthusiast, even though I think everybody is in certain ways. It's just that people picture art as a painting, but it's definitely and fortunately not only that. So you try to debunk this and make it more accessible, and actually you don't need to be an art professional to give your opinion on a piece of art. It's you everybody's legit to say what they think. I have a few questions there. Like, first, how do you debunk this? Like, you or other people in, in the world of art, in the art industry. Also, I was thinking about that, and the fact that it's inaccessible. It's not so inaccessible, but you know what I mean. It's a kind of, there's kind of secret or mystery, or it's ambiguous. It's very special. But doesn't it make it more attractive, the fact that it's like this? It's like, if a door is closed, you want to open it, right? But if the door is wide open, there's less mystery. So of course it should be more accessible, but also the fact that there's still mystery is maybe a good thing in some ways. What do you think about that?
So to answer your two questions, first, how do we try to make it more accessible? I think this is part of the mission of any business owner, and more so in the art world, because that's at first why artists give us, especially in contemporary art, because we know them, they're living
Mm,
people. That's why
yeah.
they give us their art. To, we have to take care of the art, and part of this taking care mission is to show it to the world. They have something,
Mm,
an artist, what is an artist? First, we have to ask ourselves. It's someone who expresses him or herself. It's the same for music, it's the same for a writer. They want to be heard. They want to be
mm,
heard in a good way. So making it more accessible is finding with them the best outlets, the best ways in terms of paths to respect what they do, but reach the people they want to reach. And most of the artists that I know, at least, want to reach a large audience. Of course,
Mm.
they want to sell because that gives them the means to continue. And I think we have to be happy. I often say to the collectors, you are the co-producers of the artists. You make them go on. It's like I'm a movie maker. I'm already thinking about the next movie I want to do, and I have to find the
Mm.
finances. So it's the same. But overall, the movie maker wants people to see the movie and appreciate it for what it holds, the message. So
Yeah.
we are the passerbys, which is a very um, subtle role because we are not the ones doing the artworks. We are not the ones explaining it. We have art critics are here to do it. We are not art historians, even though sometimes
Mm.
we do overstep because we are
Mm.
unruly. But we are just passerbys. So we try to respect the voice of the artist and give it to the others. And I love to
Mm.
work on people who think that they are not the ones that are the targets, that they do not
Mm.
understand, because these are the most beautiful stories. People who think it's not for them, a quote. You just have to do the exercise and bring people to artworks and at some point the dialogue between the person and the art happens. And this is something that belongs to them. It's not even you
Mm.
just make it happen. You just make the you put the good elements so as they
You
have
create
the
the opportunity.
exactly that's the only thing we do. Which relates to your second question, which is like how if we open the doors too much. You're right. And making accessible is not lowering the expectations. There's a
Mm.
big difference. Accessibility is not necessarily the same thing as democratization. You don't want to make
Yeah.
it a lower standard form of expression. It doesn't
Mm.
mean that you are going to make too much compromise. Far so. Um,
Mm.
so it's more about making it accessible, creating the opportunities, but then there is a path, and it can be hard. Sometimes some artists are quite hard to understand, but that's what makes it interesting. And so, yes, the doors sometimes have to be opened, and the journey has to be made. Um, but it doesn't mean that we're not here to help. So I think I like your image of mystery of
Yeah.
I often use the image of a journey. It's an adventure. I mean, you wouldn't
Yeah.
enjoy rafting if it was not hard, if it's just going on a little boat and having no uh, emotion, sensation. You have to find it hard sometimes. So yes, there is mystery in order to decipher what the artist has to share. Um, Agree, not agree. There are debates. There are plenty of things.
About the new technologies and AI, I know it's such buzzwords, AI, but how do you see the impact of all the new technologies evolving every day, the impact on contemporary art, and do you have examples of artists that I'm sure you have of artists that use technologies in innovative ways?
I think, yes, it is a buzzword, AI, and many questions have been shuffled these last days, weeks around this. Maybe too much. At some point, you weaken the
Mm.
words using them in
Yeah.
every possible way. But still, it is something that is not related necessarily only to the art world. We are changing, the world is changing, and in big ways. Um, AI is not a new thing. It is something we've seen the little replicas with things going on for the past 50 years. And here I'm paying a special tribute to my father. When I was a little girl, computers were the size of a room. And so now I'm like, wow, this was the real seed. There was already algorithm.
Mm.
AI is just algorithms. When I was a kid, I was drawing on those little cards that were number. Any person who worked in computer science see what I mean. There were rectangular cards were
Mm.
punching cards basically, and that's how you were coding things. For me, I like the texture of those cards because they were thick and I found them super classy to draw on. But I got interested on the back of the card, like how do you code things? Algorithm is just about coding the world
Yeah.
and helping us to grow faster on certain things that we do imagine, but that would take a
Mm.
lifetime to encompass with our little brains because we are quite imperfect
Mhm.
creatures. Um, so it's only a tool in the art world. It's not more. So people who will still paint with old paint traditional way are very welcome and it's very good. What is interesting is how it changes the world around. So how are we going to do to better promote the artists? How are we going to better keep the traceability on artworks? How are we going to do things around the arts and creative people? This being said, there are some artists that have taken this tool, and it's not a new thing. I've been on
Mhm.
the board since 2001 of a cultural art center slash research lab here in France that is tackling those things. We were calling it multimedia back then. It's a lost
Mm.
word now,
Yeah.
but I like it anyway because it's a multifaceted reality.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so you had artists who were even back then already working. There was this artist Benamou who was working on capturing signs and making artworks alive on what was going then on internet, which was quite new. And
Mm.
depending on the signs, your artwork would evolve. Simple, but today seems simple, but so true. It
Yeah.
was like the heartbeat of the web, the World Wide Web.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like this idea a lot. And today, in the same way, you have artists who are doing amazing things. There's a trio of French artists who are quite famous in the AI world called Obvious, who managed to do artworks directly from their thoughts.
Mm.
And there is a scientific paper prior to this showing that it is possible. So not only I like the fact that they went through their idea and they made it happen, but it also shows how art is important. Artists have crazy ideas, they make them happen.
Mm.
I want to
Mm.
see where in 10 years this idea will lead us. And I'm pretty sure it's
Yeah.
not going to be like some people told me, oh my God, people are going to read in our thoughts. I'm like, anyway, you're already giving everything away when you look at Instagram. So um,
True.
people know if you what kind of woman you're lurking on, so like, or do
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
prefer
Yeah.
little class or whatever. So it's like hello, but artists are opening new ways. So these tools
Mm.
for artists who see themselves more as a researcher are interesting,
Mm.
and there are plenty
Mm.
of other artists who do amazing things. Yes.
Just one quick question before the last question. I'm curious to ask you why do you like art? What what does it do to you? What aspect of it do you like? What do you like to feel when you see, listen to, or a piece of art? Like, is it the thinking, the aesthetics, the provocation? Yeah, I'm just curious to know.
Um, when you ask me why do I like art, to me it rings like if you were asking me why do you like fresh air and water,
Okay.
for instance. I do breathe art, and I think most of the people even unwillingly do so. I think it's as essential to us as air and water, that what makes us human, because we have
Mm.
this abstracted capacity. Then,
Mm.
if I want to dig a little deeper into your question, yes, it's about what it makes me feel, what it makes me think about, and an empty environment, empty of artistic creative proposition, um, would probably drive me crazy because of the void. So
Mm.
it is
Mm.
the way of keeping our brain alive for sure. In my
Yeah.
case, that's what it keeps me alive.
I love that answer. Okay, and last question. Now I'm not only talking to the gallery owner, but also the business owner. Is the question I ask all my guests. Is there a lesson that you learned throughout your experience that you would like to share with fellow business owners?
Interesting. Many experiences could be shared with business owners. I like to hear about other business owners. I'm getting very inspired by them.
Mm-hmm.
One maybe experience that has been very key and formative was going abroad, and especially going east, in my case, going to mainland China, establishing a business there, because everything was different.
Mm.
The way of thinking, the way of counting, the way of writing.
Mm.
And I'm not talking about the language only. I'm talking about, for instance, when I say the way
Mentality
of
and
writing is drawing instead of putting letters together, it's a
mm.
different way of thinking. And
Mm.
anyone who has a business in Asia but comes from a more Western culture, or vice versa, because I'm having fun with my Chinese friend, they say it's exactly the same for us the other
Mm.
way. It's just a different, the brains are connected, are built differently. And sometimes we meet in between and we're like, oh, I did half of the way, you do half of the way. So this has been an amazing experience. Um, I started I didn't know where I was stepping in, and many times at the beginning I was getting nervous, I was getting stressed, and at some point I had the experience was strong enough, and I was like, you know what? They know what they're doing. It was on a
Mm.
construction site. It was not ready. The gallery was not ready, and we were opening this location the next day, and it was 2
Mm.
a.m., but nothing was ready. Nothing, nothing, nothing. The floor at the entrance was not finished. The door
Mm.
was not there. Needless to say, the show was barely ready. And I was like, and the main person in charge of the construction site told me, you know what, you'd better go sleep a little bit and leave us do our job. And it clicked, and I
Wow.
was like, actually, they're building so much, they know what they're doing. And I came back at 8 a.m. after a small night. I was more relaxed, obviously, and they were all finished. And I could do the last touch-ups to the show. And at 7 p.m., we totally opened, but like normal. Nobody saw that a few
Yeah.
hours earlier, the door was not even there. So I,
Wow.
I learned a lot from that experience, and I have this construction man in my brain. I often say, you know what, we'll make it. We'll make it. And China has learned me this, that maybe in the Western world we're postponing things because we're like, oh, this time around we will not be able to make it, so let's keep it for the next round. In
Mm.
China, I love the fact that until the last minute, you can change things, you can improve,
Mm.
because you're opening at 7. You're not opening at
Yeah.
5. So until 7, you do have time to make it better. So it's been a great lesson.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Magda, for sharing about
Thank
your
you.
journey. Thank you. I hope it'll be inspiring to art enthusiasts listening to us, and also people who might be not so at ease in this world. But I hope now they have a bit more pieces of advice and insights from you. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the nice conversation.